We know regarding any problem, the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This is equally applicable in preventive health as well as critical care. How? Let's see. Common preventable situations and illnesses in ICU, as you can see on this slide, are basically standards of care, and they are part of common ICU or sepsis guidelines, right? Like deep vein thrombosis, trace ulcers, pressure sores, nosocomial infection, as we are seeing, right? We are not going to discuss all of these, right? So what we are going to discuss, let's go through a case. It's elderly, 89-year-old gentleman, diabetic, hypertensive with status post CABG status, CKD with create of 2 or 2.2. He had possibly underlying dementia and presented with generalized weakness, drowsy state, and slurred speech, and fever of 1 day. He worsened over 36 hours in form of deterioration in GCS, conscious level from 14 to 11, and he became hypoxic and tachypneic. And he had gurgling sound from oral cavity with weak cough reflex and oliguria. What would be the next appropriate action? The options are wait for 24 hours, the antibiotic might work, hemodialysis as patient is having CKD, oliguria and encephalopathy, airway protection, intubation and ventilation, or he is too elderly to go for any invasive support. घर लेके जाओ और सेवा करो. Yes, perfect. So airway protection is the need of the situation, right? So how shall I prevent aspiration pneumonitis, right? So this term was coined first in 1946 by Mendelssohn while providing obstetric anesthesia. The microaspiration is very common even in healthy during sleep. Chemical pneumonitis, which is aspiration of gastric juices in a significant amount, that is in the range of 80 to 100 ml with pH of less than 2.5. And aspiration pneumonitis, which is actually a aspiration of infected material, colonized oropharyngeal or gastric contents. So that is a real concern. And aspiration of blend material like food and particulate matters and blood. So who are at the risk of aspiration? As you can see, those with weak swallowing like oropharyngeal disease, esophageal disease, cancer, those with airway disease like COPD and post-extubation status, or anybody who is having altered conscious level and cough reflex because of any systemic or neurological problem are at the risk of aspiration. So what would be the preventive approach in a group of patients with acute stroke? What are few points we can consider and remember? Right? A full evaluation of speech and swallowing reflex. Right? Promote oral mechanical soft diet over thin liquids. Right? Early mobilization and swallowing exercise is of very important part. RT feed to be given in semi-recumbent position, sitting position over supine position. And SE inhibitor, an antiplatelet like cilostazol, has been associated with release of substance P, which is helpful in promoting cough and swallowing reflex. So, dear friends, what would be your approach if patient comes with stuporous comatose state and who remains in coma, right? The approach is, of course, airway protection by intubation. The approach is derived from traumatic brain injury guidelines. And again, in certain conditions like hypoglycemic coma and metabolic encephalopathy and post-ictal status, when the comatose state is rapidly reversible, in this situation, you may consider wait for a period of 4, 6, 12 hours sometimes. If you have proper expert team who can monitor and intervene and intubate on time if required, right? So antibiotic therapy, maybe for 24 hours if any emergency intubation is required. Of course, before surgery and anesthesia, no food for 8 hours and clear liquids for 2 hours. And oral care with chlorhexidine in the patient who are at the risk of aspiration. And removal of poorly maintained tooth is equally important, right? So let's move on to the case 2. An elderly lady, diabetic hypertension, with status post PTCA, diabetic nephropathy probably, and create of 1.5, and anemic. She presented with CHF and high BNP, TROP-T positive, create of 1.5 to 1.8, very stable after support, but she had persisted to have retrosternal pain and LVF. And the symptoms were waxing and waning. So what would be your choice regarding proceeding for coronary angiography? Again, this might be debatable, but what would be your preference? A, we'll go for angiography as it is TROP-T positive, likely coronary syndrome. Avoid angiography as patient is high risk for coronary angiography, contrast-associated acute kidney injury and LVF. Or shared decision making with informed consent with benefit and risk explained to the family and suggesting a need for coronary angiography. Yes, my preference again would be the same, is shared decision making with some accepted risk. Right? So how can I prevent acute kidney injury? First, I have to identify who are at the risk. Age above 75, diabetic, CKD, and those clinically who are on vasopressor, having sepsis, hypotension of any etiology, and heart failure or any high-risk surgery, or those who are on nephrotoxic medication. These are the probable etiological association with who can easily develop acute kidney injury in ICU. Right? A good article, this is the one of the guidelines to prevent acute kidney injury. Of course, what are the recommendations from this 2017 guideline? Volume expansion, optimal fluid resuscitation. It is easier said than done, right? So control fluid resuscitation with avoiding fluid overload. Fluid overload will lead to venous congestion, edema, and subsequent renal ischemia. The balanced crystalloids in the form of RL or isolate M should be used when you are resuscitating large volume, that is more than 2-3 liters per day, right? Vasopressor, timely and appropriate vasopressor with the goal to achieve mean arterial pressure of 65 to 70. If patient is chronically hypertensive, you may target mean pressure of 80 to 85 to prevent acute kidney injury. Noradrenaline is the choice in most of the shock state, and vasopressin is proven by evidence in vasoplegic shock after cardiac surgery. Of course, early diagnosis and treatment of the cause is of very crucial importance. The diuretic, many of us are fond of using diuretic in hope to prevent oliguric into non-oliguric renal failure. But the guidelines suggest against loop diuretic to prevent acute kidney injury. Of course, it should be used to control and avoid fluid overload. Vasodilators like dopamine, levosimendan are of no use. Review nephrotoxic drug list and adjust drug doses according to create clearance. Right? Last topic we are going to cover, what if we can prevent such situation. What is true regarding in-hospital cardiac arrest in the ward? Which one is true? A, presenting rhythm is most often shockable, VTVF, means cardiac etiology. B, presenting rhythm is most often non-shockable, means asystole and PE, means non-cardiac cause. In ward, cardiac arrest. True, majority are right. Commonly in community and ER, the presentation is with cardiac cause, but those who are admitted for more than 2-3 days, though many times the cause is sepsis, respiratory failure, and metabolic etiology, which will lead to PEA type of rhythm, which is non-shockable. According to incidence of cardiac arrest is 9 to 10 amongst 1,000 admissions, and survival to hospital discharge is 20 to 25% after revival from arrest, with variable neurological outcome. So can I prevent cardiac arrest in my hospital? First, we need to identify who are at risk. Very well-known 5H and 5Ts from ACLS guideline, right? If your patient is having persistent hypovolemia, hypotension, hypoxia, or of any etiology, or patient is having any metabolic factor like metabolic acidosis, hypokalemia, hyperkalemia, they are likely to advance to cardiac arrest state, right? And 5 T's like thromboembolic event, tamponade, and toxins. So we must be aware of this group of patients are at risk. How can I prevent? What is the strategy for prevention of avoidable in hospital cardiac arrest? The proper placement of patient in proper ICU or monitoring area or in proper hospital when patients are at risk, right? Monitor them regularly and frequently. Use of early warning signs like that is again you can get on your mobile app, EWS, early warning sign, or modified early warning signs, MUSE or EWS, or calling criteria when patient deteriorates. Timely response by the resuscitation team, that is medical emergency team, that is before occurrence of cardiac arrest. Team should be regularly trained and their roles should be clearly defined, and they are empowered to call for help as and when required. Audit all cardiac arrest and false arrest and unexpected death in the hospital. And if you do not have any of this system or monitoring system or intervening system, transfer the patient to proper care area or hospital, right? So take home message would be identify the patient who are at the risk for this list of preventive situations. Monitor them closely. Do no harm by prescribing the medication which can cause further hypotension or deterioration in conscious level or renal function. Preventive system and team which acts on time effectively to avoid aspiration kind of situation, acute kidney injury, and arrest of cardiac activity. Investing thousands may help you to save legs and even life, which is more important, right? So no point in regretting later on once your brain is out of skull and you may think that law of helmet was a better idea, right?